So I want to thank our friend Bo Harris Nakakakana for that beautiful flute music to bring us together this evening and get us in a good mind and in a good way to hear the words of our honored guest, our esteemed guest, Faithkeeper Oren Lyons. So before I do that, however, there are just a few things that I want to take care of. And one of those is to read our Indigenous land acknowledgement. So this week's programming, I should say, because it's multiple days. You've probably seen this image around with the publicity that's been traveling through the university and beyond. This land was already loved. And that title was inspired by a line from a poem by Karen Wood, a Monacan poet who is no longer with us, but was our Peachtree guest back in 2016. Very talented writer, anthropologist who had an awful lot to do with improving the curriculum on American Indian topics in the schools in the state of Virginia. So we really appreciate Karen, and her poem is from her book, Weaving the Boundary. So this land was already loved is just something that has always stuck with me. I'm Bonnie Brown, the coordinator of the Native American Studies program at West Virginia University, and I'm pleased to have you all here tonight and welcome our in-person audience, as well as, I believe, something like 130 people online joining us tonight from throughout the country, and we had some registration from an Indigenous First Nation school in Canada. So we know that tonight's programming and the wise words of our elder guest here tonight will travel far. So the Indigenous land acknowledgement. West Virginia University, with its statewide institutional presence, resides on land that includes ancestral lands of the Shawnee, Lenape, also called Delaware, Haudenosaunee, including the Seneca, Cayuga, Onondaga, Oneida, Mohawk, and Tuscarora nations, Cherokee, and many other Indigenous peoples. In acknowledging this, we recognize and appreciate these Indigenous nations whose lands we are living on and working in. Indigenous peoples have been in the place currently known as West Virginia since time immemorial. It is important that we understand both the context that has brought our university community to reside on this land and our place within this long history. We also recognize that colonialism is a current ongoing process, and as scholars seeking truth and understanding, we need to be mindful of our present participation in this process. And so this programming, This Land Was Already Loved, Native leaders discuss their ancestral connections to place, has allowed us to invite and welcome and host a number of esteemed leaders, and some of them who are here with us tonight. I'd like to acknowledge the participation of Eastern Shawnee Chief Glenna Wallace. Would you like to say hi, Glenna? Thank you. Thank you. Delaware Tribe of Indians Chief Brad Kilscrow. And Delaware Nation President Deborah Dotson. And Shawnee Tribe Chief Ben Barnes traveled to Morgantown, but is a little under the weather tonight, so he will not be able to join us this evening in person, but I know he joins us in spirit and hopefully will be with us tomorrow as one of our presenters. I also want to welcome Tadadaho Sidhill, who's over here to my left, and many of you attended the Peachtree ceremony today and benefited from listening to his words and knowing that the tree was renewed and there were blessings offered today. So we thank you, Tadadaho, for also being here. So thank you. At this moment, I'd like to welcome our mayor up to the dais. This is Mayor Jenny Celine. And for the second year in a row, as mayor of the city of Morgantown, she has issued a proclamation for Indigenous Peoples Day today. So thank you, Mayor Celine.
As you can imagine, with a proclamation of this size. We are not going to be reading all of it in its entirety, but it was read at our city council meeting. I'll read a little excerpt from it this evening because we want to get on with hearing from our elders. Oops. This is a welcome from the City of Morgantown and our Human Rights Commission. We're looking forward to hearing tonight about the topic, This Land Was Already Loved, which to me evokes the thought of stewardship. I think that stewardship is a concept that is missing sometimes in our times, and I think that we need to be thinking about how we pass along the ideas that we learn about this evening. I wanted to mention that my grandfather, a German, very much enjoyed the Menominee and Winnebago tribes in Wisconsin, that he learned language, drumming, singing. Actually, at his funeral, there were 2 drum circles. He was someone who enjoyed learning, but then passing back. So some people who in their younger days didn't have the opportunity to learn about their native language and some customs would come to the German to get some of their customs back again so they could keep passing them on. So I look forward to this evening and how blessed we are to have all of you here tonight so that we can learn more and continue to pass along the stories and ideas that we're talking about tonight. And I'm just going to read the last little bit of Indigenous Peoples Day proclamation. So we're proclaiming the second Monday of October as Indigenous Peoples Day and encourage continued recognition, appreciation, and celebration of Indigenous people through goodwill, respect, and friendship. The City of Morgantown strongly encourages individual residents, schools, businesses, public and private organizations, and other community partners to join with communities across America in promoting the well-being of Indigenous people, pledging to be more informed, educated, and engaged. So thank you very much for all of you being here this evening, especially our guests. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mayor Celine. Thank you for the good work you do at the helm here in the city of Morgantown. And a little bit later, we'll hear from Deputy Mayor Joseph Abughanam. So thank you for those words. So remember that tomorrow we have an all-day forum from 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. up in the Blue Ballroom of the Mountain Lair upstairs, and you will hear from the various Native leaders who have come to present. We'll have more music from Bo Harris and also some singing and a dance performance by John Block, who is Seneca, and his daughter, who will perform a traditional dance. She's a champion Mohawk smoke dancer, so I know that we look forward to hosting them. So it's a pleasure for me to introduce Faithkeeper Oren Lyons. I first met him many years ago when he came to be our elder in residence at WVU. I already knew of him from our co-founder, Carolyn Ryer, who really thought the world of him and had a good friendship, a good rapport. And I think that his inspiration helped her to decide to found the Native American Studies program along with Dr. Ann Patterson. And so when he was our elder in residence, my son, who's over here in this far row, was a little 4-year-old, I believe, and charged up on the stage to talk to Chief Lyons, as he called him. And that's a fun childhood memory. And now, all these years later, how blessed we are to have you return to campus. We thank you for that. So Truth to Power, History from Indigenous Perspectives. Who is qualified to give such a talk with such an important title? I think you'll find out tonight that our guest is eminently qualified. Faithkeeper Oren Lyons, Turtle Clan, Onondaga Nation, Haudenosaunee Confederacy, as I said, a longtime friend to our WVU Native American Studies program, has generously consulted with us over the decades, and especially this past year with additional support in the development of our special events, the forum, in bringing the leaders of the Native nations together here in one place for a public presentation to help benefit the state of West Virginia and others to better understand the history since time immemorial of Indigenous people in this land and the ongoing sovereign nations that are present throughout our society. So as I said, he has served as both Native American Studies Elder in Residence and as our Peace Tree Ceremony Guest of Honor. He's an award-winning Indigenous rights activist, a very talented artist. You can Google and see some of his paintings online. He's an author and an athlete. Already a member of the U.S. Lacrosse Hall of Fame. Next week, on October 19th, he'll be inducted into the Canadian Order of Sports Awards Hall of Fame. So how about a round of applause for that? And an All-American at Syracuse, if I'm not mistaken. Is that correct? I think that's right. His son Rex is telling me yes. So he received an award last year at an event that I was fortunate enough to attend, the National Congress of American Indians annual convention in Sacramento, and he was given an award for lifetime achievement. So lifetime achievement and contributions to Indian country and the rights of Indigenous people. And some of the remarks made there also paid tribute to him, in addition to what I have written tonight. And the presenter said, we want to celebrate Oren Lyons' outstanding contribution throughout Indian country. His leadership has been recognized as a world-renowned a world-renowned leader, a visionary for peace, justice, and sovereignty. He's a great mentor to many. He has worked with Indigenous peoples worldwide and the United Nations to recognize Indigenous rights. He has addressed the UN General Assembly and other gatherings of world leaders, is a member of the Advisory Committee for the UN Environment Program, and continues to share the wisdom of the Haudenosaunee as a speaker, author, publisher, and board member of the Traditional Circle of Indian Elders and Youth, as well as the 7th Generation Fund for Indian Development. Faithkeeper Lyons is the author of several books and a much in-demand global lecturer. He's the subject of many documentaries and films. He's also a prominent member of the UN General Forum of Spiritual and Parliamentary Leaders and a retired professor emeritus of American Indian Studies at SUNY Buffalo. As I mentioned, celebrated artist and painter, member of the Lacrosse Hall of Fame, a tireless activist for American Indian causes and humanity's responsibilities to the earth and future generations. In 2017, he was the executive producer of the documentary film Spirit Game, Pride of a Nation. And I encourage you to look at that trailer. Just the trailer alone is very inspiring. And we have the movie here at WVU, and we've screened it many times, including when Faithkeeper Lyons was here last. Along with several other awards, he is a recipient of the Ellis Island Congressional Medal of Honor, the United Nations NGO World Peace Prize, the Smithsonian's Award for Art and Cultural Achievement, and Sweden's prestigious Friend of the Children Award, along with a colleague, Nelson Mandela. So Truth to Power, History from Indigenous Perspectives, I can think of no one else I would be more pleased to welcome this evening to speak to us under the heading of This Land Was Already Loved. Please help me welcome Faithkeeper Oren Lyons. Thank you so much.
Stand up. Peace. And peace on behalf of the Indigenous leaders who have come here today. I speak on their behalf, and fortunate to have the leader of our Confederacy, Tadadaho Sidhil, and now my constant partner and worker in the common good, my son Rex over here, picked up the load. And all of you who are here, it's been a good day. I mean, we really started out very well this morning, and we burned tobacco, and we gave our greetings to the tree of peace here that you have planted, which is very tall now. It's been here for a while. And what brought me down to this town and close by many years ago now, we had heard that the graves of our people have been desecrated and raided, basically, and bones were strewn about and skulls were taken, not far from here. So fellow Chief Vince Johnson and myself came down to see what we could do, and it was from that time, from this old meeting place of Native people here. This is a very, very old meeting place, been here for thousands of years. It's where the rivers come together. You find water, you find people. And we met Carolyn Breyer at that time. She was here, and we had the discussion, and she was very grieved about what we were talking about, and she began this program that you have here. And we've been coming down here ever since. That's many, many years ago. And so Bonnie's picked that up very well. Thank you. And it's been carried on. And very consistently by the families who are here today that you represent. And today we did have a visit. Our symbol of peace and friendship that sits on top of the tree of peace was here. An eagle, which I thought was extremely important. And the fact that we had our spiritual leader here, Sid Hill, to burn the tobacco for peace. And peace is not an absence of war. Peace is a way of life. And that's what we must all strive for, as you can see in today's times. Today's times are what they are. And you meet the issues as they come, no matter who you are. And the eagle that was here was speaking as well. Spoke very loudly, in fact. And they said to us long ago, when you hear him speak, you better pay attention because he's calling attention to things about peace. So we heard all of that today, if you can imagine. It's been a good day. And as I said, peace is not an absence of war. It's not armaments put aside and held at bay. It's total. And long ago, a leader that brought us together in the second of our large, long history, the great peacemaker, we call him. We don't use his name. We call him a great peacemaker. Came amongst warring nations that we were, because at that time our people were in the same situation as you see today, the very same. And he worked hard. He found an ally at Onondaga. And this man had lost daughters. He was grieving. And they came together and they created an alliance for peace. So it's a long story, and I'm not going to go through all that, except to say that it continues, and that this very evil man that was in charge of the Onondagas at that time, fierce beyond fierce, evil beyond evil, cannibal, killer. And he was in charge. And the peacemaker could not penetrate Onondaga as he went from the Mohawks to the Oneidas. He went around to the Cayugas, to the Senecas. And long stories, I'd say, and he gathered them together and he said, now we must go to Onondaga. And we must bring Onondaga into the center fire, into our union, a peace. And of course, very formidable opponent of the whole idea, who lived in the weeds in the swamp. And so that his hair was filled with snakes, evil beyond evil, fierce beyond fierce, and powerful, very powerful. And so there was a voice, and they said, you know, there's a woman who has a lodge. It's Erie. That's a nation. You call a lake now Erie. She was Erie. And she was feeding the men who were on this path of war. They would stop, and there was rules to her lodge. You leave your weapons outside. You speak not of war. You rest and you eat. And that's what she was doing. And so, Peacemaker found her. He said, well, maybe she can help us. And so when they approached, or tried to approach, this very powerful, evil person in the swamp, he wouldn't come out. He'd just laugh, and he would laugh, and he would laugh. You could hear it rolling across the mountains. And then she said, I have a song, and maybe that will help. And so with that song, drew him against his will out. And the peacemaker standing beside her began to bargain. Oh, I like things the way they are, he said. Well, if you have peace, he said, you will be a leader, and you'll have responsibilities from all the people of the earth for peace. This discussion taking place at Onondaga, where the lake is today, central New York. There was no New York then. New York was in a very, very distant future. And so this dialogue is taking place. and the song that drew him out. You'll hear it now, if you're fortunate, because only the chiefs sing it when we raise leaders. But hear it. And so what I'm talking about is a long history of the native people of this Turtle Island. That's the name that we have, not America, from Amerigo Vespucci, who is Italian by all means. No, this isn't Italian, this is Turtle Island. And so, all of these years, we've maintained our confederacy, the Haudenosaunee, the people of the Longhouse. French call us Iroquois. English call us Six Nations. We are Haudenosaunee. And under our wing, in those distant days back there, we had, they said, at least 86 nations under our wing. And I saw a map. I saw a map when three of us were traveling in England. And it was a map that was marked 1602. And it was an English map, because we were in England and we had a day off and we said, what shall we do? We said, well, let's go to the museum here and see what they say about us. So the three of us leaders went there, and one very prominent looking leader who was with us still wore his blanket and still had his braids and still had his big black hat. And when we came to the museum doors, the guard looked and he said, "Go," he says, "it symbol itself," he says. And he did indeed. So we went in and we found this map by the English of the Haudenosaunee territory, and the map had our correct name, Haudenosaunee, 1602. And the map started from Nova Scotia and went across to the big lake, which you call Canada, and down to the east side of the lake that you call Michigan, and then further down to the Ohio, to the Mississippi, and down the Mississippi and across what would say maybe Georgia and up, and in it and on it was Haudenosaunee territory. Now, of course, that wasn't our territory, but basically what was there, what they were noting was the influence of our nation. And I think if you were to see it in a more realistic way by using the colors around Onondaga Lake and around the Great Lakes, you would see a bright red where our people were, and then as it spread out, it would get weaker and weaker until it faded. That would be a more realistic way to understand our influence. But the influence was a peacemaker. It was about peace. And today, there was the tree. And today, there was Tadadaho, who sits here. I don't know how many Tadadahos since the first one. Because all of those 50 leaders of that time, their names became offices. And so the leaders of the Haudenosaunee today still bear those names as an office. And we still carry the process and the procedures of governance. And these offices are lifetime. They're not 4 years. You don't get a break. It's your whole life. And there was no such thing as pay in those days where we lived. And so the leaders were to service the people and to carry the peace. And in my lifetime, I'm pretty old now, been around a long time, seen a lot of changes. Yeah, next year I'll be 94. So, approaching 100. And, as we all know, as we sit here, it's one day at a time. There's no predicting the future. It's one day at a time for all of us. So my philosophy has always been, well, you better get the best out of the day then. So one day at a time and get the best out of the day and do what you can. Positive. For peace. And so that message then had to come to this section because the graves of our ancestors and our people were desecrated, open, and there were bones lying about. And that's what we had to come down here to work at. And then we met this very determined woman, Lynn Ryer. She said, we're going to fix that. We're going to do better. And so today is the program that she started. And here we are. And we had an opportunity to burn tobacco at the Tree of Peace that you have planted here. It's going to be a pretty big tree now. It's been here a while. And so it comes around a big circle. Life is a continuum. The history is today, as history was yesterday, and the history is coming. And we're all involved. And the whole idea of being here to this day is to celebrate the coming together at this place where the waters converge, this old campground of our people who traveled here thousands of years. Fishing was always good here. Everybody knew that. And so today we had a very important event in that the eagle showed up. There he was, looking pretty good, I thought. And he hollered. And you know why he hollered. And we have to just be strong about these times and these places, and we have to encourage our young people. We have to guide our young people. We have to give them very much direction by our own conduct. That's how they learn. They watch what you do, whether you're good or bad. They learn from you. And as every generation, you have the work that's presented to you. It's not an option, it's just what's there. So here we are. And started out, I thought, very well. Very well. We had a little sprinkling of rain. And in our cosmologies, in our understanding, that's the best blessing you can get, is that rain, that gentle rain. That's a promise. It's water, it's life. That's a promise. And we're fortunate. We're fortunate today. We're fortunate to be here. We're fortunate to be in this room. When you look about what's happening in the world today. And with that, you have to understand that this is what they call Indian country. It always has been and will be. We have no intention of going anywhere. This is home base for us. And it's becoming a home base for you. You've only been here 5 days. It's not very long. Because in our speech, in a way, a day could be a day, or it could be a year, or it could be 100 years. So 5 days, not very long. The time is like, and then look about and judge the conditions and say, have we done good, or how is our condition? You have to do that, you know. You have to look about and judge the conditions all the time. Are we doing well? What needs to be fixed? What needs to be worked on? So all that long history, important point that people don't often think about, but I watch constantly. When I was 20 years old, that's a while back now, pretty much just trying to stay out of jail. 20 years old, 1950. There were 2.5 billion people in the whole world. Here we are, 70 years later, there's 8 billion people. Tripled the population in one lifetime. Did you think about that? Have you ever thought about that? You triple the population. You're talking about water. You're talking about food. You're talking about a place to live. You're talking about peace. That's what you have to think about. That's what you have to consider. That's what our leadership watches. We spoke of 7 generations. When the peacemaker said and set up our confederation, he said, 7 generations from now, continue the word of the great law of peace. Well, there were many, many, many generations ago. So after the first 7 generations, then every generation became the 7th. So now we speak of generations of peace. But he used the word 7 to give you a perspective. And the 7 was 7 times the lifetime of a person. Not the 20-year shortcut you take today for call a generation. 20 years. A person that's 20 years old is just getting out of childhood, never mind a generation. So a long perspective and principle of peace, that's the strength. And the natural world, nature you call nature, which we are all part of, must be protected for the future, for those generations coming. You know, we've advanced, you would say. We've advanced, they tell us, science. There are people walking around on the moon. You know, that's just an amazing thing. Yet, I would say in my observations that dollars and cents have won over common sense. Money has become what everybody talks about and strives for, not peace. So we have to change our values. Some years ago, one of our very important old leaders from the Hopi Nation, he said, and the Hopis, you know, Hopi means peace. That's the name of the nation is peace. Can you imagine? But that's what prevailed here in this Turtle Island. We had great councils, and here in the East, there were conflicts that were settled by a game of lacrosse than a war, if you can imagine. That's peace. So a great disservice has been put upon our people because they don't tell you who we are. They don't tell you about our history. They don't tell you about what we have here. A great disservice to you because your ignorance of our history and so forth is not a help in these times. So that has to change. And if this new, what I would call fledgling country of 200 and some odd years, that's not very long, you know, for a country. Pretty feisty, still feisty. Got to control that. So in a short time, things have advanced scientifically, but not spiritually. Spiritual authority and power, that's the foundation of life. That's what the indigenous people know. And just for a little information, when we had come through several great events, and we were gathering, trying to see what we could do to help our people. I don't know how many of you remember the second conflict at Wounded Knee. How many of you remembered Wounded Knee the second time? Raise your hand. Well, not bad. We were asked to go there by the Lakota people who came to the Longhouse of Onondaga, their leaders, and said, "Can you come and help us find peace?" And so we were assigned to go. And two of us young men at that time were assigned to be the leaders of that group. We went to Wounded Knee, and it was a real shootout. I remember one night, as we were in a barn where a lot of our people were sleeping and where the other chief and myself slept with the people in the barn on the floor. We were pinned to the floor by gunfire. And I would estimate about 71,000 rounds come in that night at Wounded Knee, 1973. That's a lot of rounds. Now, I know about military. I'm ex-82nd Airborne paratrooper, so I know what a bullet sounds like. And we couldn't raise our head. We were flat on the floor. Interesting times. Quite contemporary. And it seems like it's a continuum. And this is, I think, where you, as we call ourselves, the common folks, us common folks who live every day, work, struggle, speak up to the leadership. So it's about time we make peace with the native people of this country. 1994, not very long ago, I got a telephone call, from a woman reporter in Rochester, New York. She says, "We got to have a meeting right now. It's urgent, urgent, urgent." She said, "You must come." So I said, "Okay, I'll come." I was in Syracuse, New York. We're talking about she was in Rochester. It's not very far, hour and a half drive. No, she said, "We got to meet privately, serious." So we met at a coffee shop. And she showed me a document. And it had the title, Gallant Piper. And it was a military document. This is in 1994. And it was a plan to attack the Mohawk Nation, the Onondaga Nation, and the Seneca Nation in Cattaraugus, Allegheny. Military attack by forces of New York State. 1994. An assault, a full-scale assault, which would have caught us totally by surprise, because we don't carry an army, we don't. Gallant Piper, it was called, the document. So, of course, I understood the term urgent. I said to the reporter, "Well, what do you want?" She says, "The story." I said, "Of course." So I rushed back. We had a quick meeting at the Longhouse. I said, "We got to get to the president." And we went to Washington. And a brand new president who did not know this was planned. And we presented it. This is 1994. A full-scale assault is planned on innocent people. Can you imagine? And he said, this new president, he said, well, he said, "We got to stop it, of course, that's why we're here." And of course, he did stop it. And then he said, "Can I have the paper?" We said, "Yeah." But I said, "The word is out," because we had called our friends in Europe. I knew that if I just gave him that paper, he would not make it public. So the word was always already in Europe. And we had told our friends, we had many, many friends in different countries, go to the US consulate and say, don't kill the Mohawks. And of course, they did. And then the questions start coming into Washington, D.C. What the hell, who's killing Mohawks? This was coming from Europe. So we stopped the assault. But no one knows that story. Have you heard that story? See what I mean? That's 1994. That would caught the incoming president completely by surprise, because part of it was politics as well. So you got to watch your politics, folks. And if you look about today and see the contention that you have, you got to pay attention. And I would just say, slap up your leaders. Speaking on your behalf, you guys got to talk to them, because it's your lives they're playing with, or they're not playing either. And that's the other. I don't know what you expected to hear from me today, but I'm sure you didn't expect to hear this. But everything is contemporary. And peace is just obviously the most precious thing that we have. And that's the great tree that was planted so many years ago by the peacemaker, a great white pine. He said, this tree will reach to the sky and everyone will see it. And it will have 4 white roots that circle the 4 directions of the earth. And all of those nations and people seeking peace follow the root back to its source and come under the protection of the great tree, peace, the great white pine. Formidable words. But they still stand. So we're standing here on the root, the one of the white roots that reach west. And you're on that root. And this is a message to you of peace. And I'm talking about real peace. It can be done. What do you think, you young folks out there? It can be done, is that right? I want to hear you. Is that right? All right. You bet. You bet. We're with you 100%, 100%. And the rest of us have to do the same. And if it comes from the halls of West Virginia, well, so be it, then. So be it. Why not? Why not? History is a continuum. It connects, and this is history. Sometime in the future, they'll be talking about this time. History is in the past, so to speak, but it's a continuum. People's thoughts and action. And I've had that perspective of 93 years, which is helpful. Because when I started out this journey long ago, I had no idea. I had no idea where it would take me and what would happen and how much I would learn. Because I had to learn just like you had to learn, and what you have to do too. At 8 billion people in the world today. Triple the population in one lifetime. It's sustainable if we treat it fairly. If people are treated fairly, it's sustainable. But When you look about the inequity today is one of the major problems. We have today billionaires. There was a point in my lifetime when they talked about millionaires. And then before that was just rich people. And these billions of dollars are going into fewer and fewer hands. It's a consolidation of wealth and enormous amounts of power in there. But in reality, the power is what sits right in this room right here. The people, the common people. You are the leaders if you stand and lead. And it's time. I heard that eagle holler today. I heard him. And everyone else heard him too. And that's his job. His job is to holler when he sees something on the horizon. That's why he sits on the tree, to do precisely what he did today. Yesterday, I never thought I would hear eagle holler. But there it was. So like I say, you think you know what's going to happen tomorrow? Well, no. Tomorrow is always kind of a mystery. So my old friend that I had, a redheaded kid that we grew up in a boxing ring and so forth, Red Oren. A lot of common sense to him. He would have been a great fighter, but he had his nose busted early, so he couldn't fight. Became a trainer. He was a cornerman for Carmen Basilio, middleweight, welterweight champion of the world. And Carmen, Red, and I used to go hunting rabbits back in the day. And Red would say, yesterday's yesterday, today's today. And that's just the way it is. So today's today, and the work stands before us, and the spirit that it takes from each of you elders up there who have learned a lot in your life, and speak on behalf of these young people who are here, because they're the energy now. They're the ones that's going to do the work. They're the ones that are going to get it done. So we have to encourage them. We have to look after them. We have to guide them. And we have to be good examples. And no place better to start with young people than University of West Virginia, by God. Is that what they say? West Virginia, by God, he says. And I agree with that. I agree with that. And I think that the currents of life that bring us all together sometimes, and here we are, all of you have your own life currents, and suddenly we're all in the same room here. And I think while we're all here in the same room, a common cause, how about peace? How about world peace? Never too late. I look at the actions that I've seen through life, and I would say we're in a 15-round championship fight. The 15th round is where we're at right now. As you know, that's the toughest round there is. The fight is even. It's even. It's going to be determined by us. So I would say that we gather our strengths, our goodwill, and we change the values of this country from money to peace. We change the values. And to emphasize that, my friend from Hopi, this old leader, and I were invited to a meeting in 1988. And we were invited by the leader of a major church in New York City. And there was a meeting of spiritual and parliamentary leaders for human survival, and included the Dalai Lama, Mother Teresa, included the bishops of England, included the leaders in Syria, meeting 1988 for peace and the common good. Spiritual and parliamentary leaders for human survival. And Senator Al Gore was in that group. That's where I first met him. And we're going to be meeting with him next week at his request in Tennessee. I know he's agitated, as everybody should be. So it'll be an interesting meeting. And we'll do our best. We'll do our best for you. I'm kind of anxious to see what he's going to say. And I think that when we look at our children and our grandchildren and what we call the next generations, that's who we're fighting for. That's who we bring the peace to. Those coming generations. Every generation is the seventh generation now. So generations of peace, that's pretty good. And I would say that Lynn Ryer and starting this program at University of West Virginia was just an amazing thing. And the fact that you have a white pine tree piece growing here, amazing thing. And you ought to pay a visit to it every now and then. Speak to it. Thank it for its peace, symbol of great peace. And I think as our generations now, I've lived through several generations of chiefs now. We got a new group, young, and just like these, full of beans, you know, they want to go. And you learn, as you all know, by experience. The older you are, the more experience you have, and I always kind of caution that people want to run out front. So here at West Virginia, and Bonnie here, who works so hard to keep this program going, and all of you people who have supported it, and the tree that you have planted here, it requires water and it requires spiritual support. That's your relation. That's your relation to this great spiritual realm that awaits all of us. So with that, I think I've covered a lot of ground, but you may have questions and you may have thoughts and you may have insights that can be helpful. So I think I'll stop my discourse now and open the discussion to all of you to comment or ask questions. And just a reminder to the speakers that will come forward that it's not time to make a speech, it's time to add something or make a question. I have to say that because I've been at this a long time. And I've heard speeches come here. So with that, I open the forum to questions and thoughts and exchanges. Look forward to it. Anything to add? Anything to add down there, you guys?
Who has a question for Faithkeeper Lyons? I know you must have questions and thoughts, and I'll try to come out to you. I feel like Oprah. Here we go.
I want to let him sit first.
Faithkeeper Lyons, I'm down here in the front, hanging out. My name is Patricia. My question for you is you talked about meeting with Al Gore next week, and you said you were anxious. You didn't say you were eager, you said you were anxious. What does that mean for us? Well, what does it mean for you? And what does that mean for us when we seek peace?
Well, peace is not an absence of war. That's the first thing. Peace really means to, as we said with the great cheer, put your armament under and bury them and get rid of them. So it means total disarmament, basically. That's what I'm talking about when I say peace. And Al Gore has been around quite a while now, and I know he's working with a huge group of young people. I understand well over 20,000 now around the world on the issues of peace. And so I am curious, very curious as to why he is summoning us, just four of us, to sit with him. It could be many reasons, because he has a broad perspective, but he is a man of peace, and I've worked with him for a long time. So it's a good question, and we'll see. And that's why I say, when I say I'm anxious to hear, when I get there and hear what he has to say.
Okay, so who else has a question? I know we have lots of folks here in the room who are stirred. This is one of my wonderful students, Julie.
Hi, so I had a question. What would be your advice that you would give to young people today who are striving for peace but may be discouraged or kind of overwhelmed by all of the... Oh, sorry.
Yeah, that is, that's really a very important observation, because it is overwhelming. It can be, if you don't have a reflective background like I do for so many years, doesn't fluster me, or something I've been working with, living with for a long time. But when somebody gets kind of caught unawares and asks a question like that, it could be very disturbing, to say the most, and at the least. And we don't want people to just curl up and not want to face it. You've got to stand up now. Everybody's got to stand up, and you've got to talk to your leaders. And whatever you do, with your system here, be careful who you put in for leadership. And it's common sense, because they're speaking on your behalf and everybody's behalf. So, yeah, I would say it's not, it's just time to be alert and get your heads up, and don't be afraid. And, last round, finish them out, you got to come out swinging. That's how you finish the 15th round. We need your energy. Thank you.
Thank you.
So we have another question back here from Renee Nicholson, who directs our West Virginia University Humanities Center.
Thank you very much for all your words and wisdom. I have a simple, hard question. What makes a good leader?
What makes a good leader? That was Renee's question, my talented colleague.
Patience, reflection, and spirit. A lot of spirit. And better add intelligence to that as well.
Mm-hmm. Don't be shy. Here we go.
Faithkeeper Lyons, there's a group here that's representing a local Boy Scouts council. And one of the questions that is circulating in our group is the most sensitive and respectful ways to interact with Indigenous peoples. In our group, there is a love of outdoors and a love of ceremony, but sometimes those activities, I think, have not been as respectful or sensitive to Native peoples as they could have been. What advice would you have for adult leaders who are trying to guide youth in this way?
Well, I'll tell you that Boy Scouts are a great group, a great age group, they're young, they're feisty, and they're learning. And so I think the best teacher is nature. Nature is the best teacher there is. And you have to learn about nature. And the first thing that I would say among Indigenous people, two really important rules or laws or practices or whatever you want to call that, almost a law. And the first one is respect. Yeah. You teach those young lads respect. And I mean total respect. The protocols of all of our Indian nations are amazing. You just didn't walk into a village. There was protocol. There was discussion. There was always a place for visitors to stay, because visitors come and went to our villages all the time. But you stood at the edge of the woods until someone came and asked who you were, what's your business, and then take you by the hand into the village. So respect, number one. And then the other one that is foundational to all of our people, no matter where I've gone, all over the place, Indigenous people always share. They share equally. That's contrary to what's leading the world in economics, isn't it? Unless, we said that to the founding fathers at one time when they were deciding they were going to becoming a nation, they came to the Haudenosaunee and they said, we're going to deal with our father. And I'm sure you don't know this, but they came to the Haudenosaunee because they knew that the Haudenosaunee had the balance of power at the time. And if we stepped into any fight, that side was going to win, no doubt. And so before they began their so-called Revolutionary War, a delegation came to the Six Nations, and they asked us, could we stand to the side in a coming conflict? That was a Treaty of Neutrality, 1775. It's there. It's buried deep in your archives, but it's there. 68 pages of the discussions, almost hour by hour. You have the records, but I know it's not in your schools or anything. So the founding fathers of the time, Continental Congress, coming to the Confederacy and saying, we're going to have a conflict with our father, could you stand to the side? That was a Treaty of Neutrality, 1775. We agreed with them. We said, yeah, we see this father between father and son. It's well known you don't want to step inside a family fight. Yeah, well known. So it was interesting because a few months earlier than that meeting, when they made the request to have this meeting, the King's men also met with us in a small village in the southeast part of Lake Ontario. And they made the same request. There was a fight coming. Of course, we knew that. We were watching it, for all this years and years. And so boiling up, we said, we know that. And they asked for the same thing. Can you stand to the side while we argue this out? Can you imagine? That's your Revolutionary War. And the balance of the power was with Indigenous people. I'm sure you never heard that. It's about time you learned your own history, But unless we do that, because it's buried, it's there, it's just buried. And in these times now, it's time, these guys, these young people, they need the truth. They need the truth, and we have to go from there. So it's a lot of work ahead of us, but still, time is time. And I urge your young people under your wing up there to remember that, share equally. And we made a treaty about that because when we were given the instructions by the peacemaker, he said, well, how shall we instruct our people? So the leaders met and they said, we'll make an agreement. It's called one dish, one spoon. Everybody takes a bite and passes it on. Share equally. Now that's very contrary to what's running the world today. Because when they first said to us, we want to make a union like yours, we said, well, you gotta share. And they said, oh yes, good idea. So today you buy a share. How about turning an idea on its head? You buy a share. Well, we can change that.
Okay, we have another question over here.
Good evening, Faithkeeper, Lyons. Thank you once again for that very heartwarming message. uh, one dish, one spoon. That's a very profound statement there. I'm not sure if it's a question or a comment or a thought that I just wanted to share with you regarding food. So my background is weed science, where I carry out research as an extension specialist to manage weeds in farms to make agriculture or food production more efficient for farmers. So you mentioned that now we have 8 billion people inhabiting the planet. So there's a huge demand, which is going to get more in the years or decades to come with the rise in population. Yet there are fewer and fewer hands engaged in food production, which is creating a lot of stress on the environment. And also there's a question about the quality of food that comes to the table. So what are your general thoughts about food production being more sustainable, more and more people engaged in farming so that we share the onus as to, as you said, one dish, one spoon, there's more hands engaged in farming so that it becomes less of an onus and more quality. Thank you.
Good idea.
Good question
One
about
dish, one
food.
spoon. Yes, indeed. Especially the farmers. It's changed. Farming has changed so much today. As you know, it's in industrial. That's really not farming. I mean, the huge machines that they use to farm now really desecrate the earth itself. In the days where our people were farming, they didn't use a plow or a horse or anything. They dug a hole so that your ground was always fertile. There was always, and they planted, and we did a lot of planting, as you know. So I think, yes, I think the common survival is going to be food and energy. That's what you're going to have to work with soon. And there's going to be hard times coming, I can tell you that. So you got to be ready to do precisely what he was asking. Think family, large community, think community, think sharing. I remember one time when we were talking with some leaders from New York State about our school and everything, and we talked about how we function at Onondaga, and he says that's he called it communism. He says that's communism. I said no, that's Onondaga. I said no, that's what we do. We share, and we got to get back to that. We literally got to work together, and especially the issues of food, because that's going to be a hard issue coming up soon.
Okay, we have one more question, and this is from a student in our Master of Social Work program here at WVU.
Hello, everyone. Nice and close. Hello, my name is Tess Jansen. I am, as she said, a student here. I used to be a federal employee working with the Forest Service, and your statement regarding youth made me think, and future generations, made me think of the BLM Bureau of Land Management's mission statement, which is to sustain the health, diversity, and productivity of public lands for the use and enjoyment of present and future generations. So my question would be, two-part, what is your relationship with these federal entities that we each have, and how can we, boots on the ground, be serving better for your people? And we are made up of ologists and heritage and firefighters, so what can we do?
That's, yeah, well, the first thing to try to answer the question is that you have to relate to the realities of the time. And when you're talking about fires and firefighters, and there are probably at this moment that we're sitting here, at least 1,000 fires in Canada going right now. And there's other fires around. And that's because of the damage that we've caused to the earth. I mean, that's there because that's what the consequence of activities of human beings, basically. So you have to begin the change. You have to begin, you know, the question coming from you and the people your age is insist on change. You know, you have to insist. Your mothers and your dads will listen to you. You'll be surprised. They're waiting for you to ask for things and talk to them and say, look, this is our future. You got to help us. And they will help you. They will. But you have to make the insistence and gather their support, reach out. It's the reality that you have to deal with in your times. And here it is, our reality, and I think that it can be met if we deal with it on an equal basis with the full intent of the welfare of future generations. I think, yes, I think it's not too late, and I think quite, maybe it's what we need to wake everybody up and get going in a new direction here. So speak to your leaders, speak to your family, because it always starts with the family. It works out. And then remember the indigenous people of this land. We're here, you know, we're all over, and we're pretty much hanging in there the way we were instructed. I'm really surprised, and the languages are still here, and in spite of the effort to destroy our languages, you know, we didn't lose our language. It wasn't lost. It was taken. It was stolen. It was beat out of our children. You know, you had, they call boarding schools. They weren't boarding schools. They were bastions of changing children's minds. There weren't schools because every one of the so-called Indian schools have graveyards. There's graveyards. You show me one school in America that has a graveyard. There's no graveyards in your schools. But there's graveyards in every one of our so-called Indian schools, many. And in Canada, just recently discovered 2,000 unmarked graves of children in this school, Indian school. No, they were there to change our minds, change the minds of the children. So that's the reality that you have to deal with now in order to move forward. And now people reaching back to us and saying, we're in hard times. You guys know a lot. Why don't you tell us? And, you know, one person asked me directly like that. And I said, gee whiz. I said, all I can tell you is what the Methodists beat into me. I was just pushing him. But still, that's the truth. They took our children, they put them in these institutions. And they were institutions. Criminal action against the people, against children. Yeah, terrible history, but you have to own up to it, and then we all move on. And we move on in one voice, one strength. We move on together for the common cause of world peace. And as I said, world peace is not the absence of war. Bury those weapons. It can be done. It can be done. It's not too late. And the United States has got a lot to say in the whole world these days. Amazing. Amazing strength you have. So for a common cause and common good, I would say yes. We put ourselves together and we work as a group. And thank for Len Ryer and Bonnie here, keeping the fires going, and your institutions in West, by God, Virginia. Yeah, time to move on for common cause. Peace.
Thank you, Faithkeeper Lyons. What an inspiring and thought-provoking, and I have to say also reassuring keynote you've done for us tonight. Truth to Power, History from Indigenous Perspectives. I've found a lot of reassurance in this talk. You know, we sometimes feel disempowered, and I think you've reminded us to be empowered and use the power we have to create justice and create understanding. We so appreciate that. Let's have a round of applause for our guest. Thank you. Thank you all. So Riley, would you please bring the gift? And Carrie Carpenter, my good colleague in Native American Studies, would you come with Riley? Because this is a large gift. It fits in very well with the theme of your talk. Faithkeeper Lyons, could I have you come over here to the lectern, please? And just like right here, I think we have a photographer here. So the one dish, many spoons. We didn't bring you any spoons, but you can hold that straight up and show it. This is a handmade bowl made of catalpa wood, grown here in West Virginia, and handcrafted by an artisan, Don Jones of Wits End Woodcraft. And we want you to have this as a symbol of our deep appreciation. So we thank you. Thank you both. And now our Deputy Mayor, Joseph Fabuganam, has something he would like to present. And we're going to close out in just a moment with some beautiful music and singing by John Block. Some of you heard him this morning, and I know you'll appreciate hearing him again.
Thank you for the introduction. Thank you as well, Faithkeeper Lyons. I really appreciate that. That is a hard act to follow. As somebody, I had it right here, okay. For those of you that don't know, I am actually a teacher here in Morgantown. So in addition to that, I'm actually alumni of WVU with my degree in history. So I really recognize and acknowledge the importance of having supporting education and cultural programming, especially. Our keys here in Morgantown are actually given as a small token of our appreciation for dedication of a person's time as well as their talent. So on behalf of the City of Morgantown and the Human Rights Commission, we would like to take this opportunity to present these keys to the city of Morgantown for some of our esteemed leaders and educators who have dedicated their time as well as their talent to our community and to help increase respect and understanding for the First Nations of this land. So first, I'm going to hand these over to our mayor, Ms. Jenny Celine. So as I call your name, if you'd be willing to please come up here. Mayor Celine will hand you a key, and then we can get a group photograph of everything, if that would be wonderful. Thank you, Bonnie. So first we have a traditional Faithkeeper, Mr. Lyons, Turtle Clan of, and you're going to have to bear with me as I read this, Onondaga Nation, the Haudenosaunee Six Nations Confederacy. That is the key to the city of Morgantown. And then we also have Totodahos of Sydney Hill and the Haudenosaunee Six Nations Confederacy. Then we have next, President Deborah Dotson of the Delaware Nation, Chief Brad Kilsgrove of the Delaware Tribe of Indians, Chief Ben Barnes of the Shawnee Tribe, and he is not able to be here with us tonight, and I apologize for that. Do you all want to come over here? Chief Glenna Wallace of the Eastern Shawnee Tribe. Catherine Foreman Gray of the Cherokee Nation History and Cultural Preservation Officer. She'll be here tomorrow. Traditional singer John Block of the Seneca Nation. Traditional dancer Kayleen Block of Mohawk. And then our musician and cultural educator Bonakaka Kinua Harris of Turtle Mountain, Chippewa. And then again, thank you on behalf of the city of Morgantown for coming here today. We really appreciate it.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you all. And there'll be some special gifts for you guys tomorrow. So thank you. Okay. All right. Keys to the city. I can't wait to see what they unlock. That's going to be get in some mischief a little bit later. Okay. So thank you, Mayor Celine. Thank you, Deputy Mayor Joseph Habuganam. And I remember when we were discussing an Indigenous Peoples Day proclamation and an Indigenous land acknowledgement for the city of Morgantown, a conversation with Deputy Mayor Habuganam, who said his own ancestry is connected to a country of people who battle each other at times and who feel oppression and feel racism and so on. And it was very meaningful to me that you connected with what we were explaining as a Human Rights Commission, and I thank you for that. So we're going to close out this evening with some music by Seneca singer, traditional singer John Block, who is a member of a ceremonial longhouse. He's a cultural educator and a Seneca language teacher. And I really, really appreciate him coming down, driving a long distance to be with us for our This Land Was Already Loved programming this week. So thank you all for coming, and please just take a moment to listen. John will tell you a little bit about the song he's going to perform, and I know you'll like it. John Block.
So it's always hard to try to figure out what set of songs to sing, especially to kind of mirror the discussion that was had, and I sat there for a little while this evening, and I really thought it over. And I always go back to this similar set of songs, and I sang a few of them earlier, and I actually sang them last year while I was here, because number one, they're very beautiful songs to sing, and number two, it's kind of a reminder of what happens. We heard a couple of terms being thrown out tonight. I heard the term the seventh generation. I heard the term sustenance. I heard the term sustainability, and I guess this set of songs is a reminder to us as to what can happen if we don't have those things, if we don't have the peace that was spoken of. There was a bird that was around here, and it at one time was a main source of food for our people. And due to overhunting, what would happen is these particular birds would roost by the thousands in one tree. And later on, now we hunted these birds with blowguns. That was our traditional way of hunting these birds. And later on, these birds had these feathers that were highly sought after by Europeans. And they would cut that tree down, and while they were roosting, it would eliminate them by the thousands. And that bird is no longer here. That bird is now extinct. And that thought wasn't a thought, and it wasn't a practice at that time. Those people were not thinking further on down the line, well, if this happens and that happens, this is what's going to happen. And we still do this. We still have these songs. In some of our territories, they use these songs to accompany some of their ceremonies. And we still have them to this day. And it's a reminder of what can happen when we don't have those ideas in mind. When we don't think about peace, when we don't think about sustainability, when we don't think about what's going to happen further on down the road. And I had a very good discussion with those that were at our luncheon today. And one of the things that I heard was the resources out towards the southwest were depleted. And water out there is hard to find. And one of the things that I took away from that is that at one point, that precious resource is going to be highly sought after. And hearing the percentage of the amount of water that we have that is available to us, that sustains us, that we use to live. Because I heard that tonight too, that water is life. And if we don't take those things into consideration, what will happen with this same bird will happen with every other resource. And so this is a reminder. These songs are a reminder, and they're very beautiful songs. And these songs we call in our language, we call it Jehkawa Oino. And it's in honor of the passenger pigeon. And I hope you enjoy that. Jack over, oh no, one day. That's what we call the pigeon dance.
Thank you, John. Now you know why I invited John back and said, please come back. We had such a good time last year, and I still have your songs traveling in my head. They're so beautiful. So thank you. And thank you, Bo Nakaka Harris, for your flute music that helped us gather tonight and get into a good place as we were to contemplate Faithkeeper Lyons' remarks. So thank you. Thank you all for coming. I hope I'll see you tomorrow morning at 9, bright-eyed and bushy-tailed. That's you, not me. At the Blue Ballroom upstairs in the Mountain Lair. And we will kick things off with more music, some opening remarks. And our first session in the morning will include presentations by President Deborah Dotson, Delaware Nation, Chief Brad Kilscrow, Delaware Tribe of Indians, and Catherine Foreman Gray, Cherokee Nation History and Preservation Officer. And then we will have our cultural lunch and learn with a presentation by John Block and his beautiful daughter, Kayleen, traditional dancer. The afternoon session will be from 1 to 4, and that will be with Chief Glenna Wallace, Eastern Shawnee Tribe, Chief Ben Barnes, Shawnee Tribe, and Tadadaho Sidney Hill, Onondaga Nation, Haudenosaunee Confederacy. And following that, we'll have a 7th inning stretch activity that Bo is going to run, an interactive, fun audience activity with some door prizes to get up and stretch. And that's so that our leaders, our Native leaders who are going to be serving on a panel, can get situated on stage and be prepared for that final part of our program tomorrow, and that's called Outlooks for the Future. It's always so important to look forward, understand the past, where we are now, but to look forward. So that closing panel will include all of the Native leaders who have graced us with their presence and their participation in This Land Was Already Loved. Thank you all for coming. Safe travels home, and please come and say hello if you'd like to. Thank you.